Hey y'all, what is going on? What is going on? It's your girl, Melba Pearson, Melba for Miami, Melba for Justice, also known as the Resident Legal Diva. And it's time for another Mondays with Melba. I hope everyone had an amazing weekend. With that, I need to turn to my amazing guest that I have this week, Tricia McDermott, who is the Savage ESQ. And she is going to talk to us about business, about branding, and also applying this to the law firm context because, of course, hi, Legal Diva, I'm always here trying to take notes and see where I can also learn how to better my business, better my brand, and to set myself up for a better retirement. Because you know what? Retirement sneaks up on you when it's time. And if you haven't made the right steps, things going to look a little different. So first off, Tricia, thank you so much for joining me on Mondays with Melba.
Thank you for having me, Melba. I am so excited to be here with you and your audience. So, I'm just going to launch into it. The Savage Esquire. I am Tricia McDermott, the Savage Esquire. I am a two-time general counsel for billion-dollar fashion companies, and I spent over 20 years being an IP lawyer, including 7 years with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. I have served on their trademark public advisory committee, which is akin to being on their board. So I've got a little insider knowledge, but none of which, I would inappropriately use. But certainly the point is I've got a lot of experience there. I am the first Black GC for both of my companies, which have been in existence, right, girl? I'm trying.
Represent. We love it.
They've both been in existence for over 60 years, and I'm grateful to have been the trusted advisor for each of those CEOs. I've been recognized by Savoy Magazine as a 2022 most influential Black lawyer. Diversity Magazine is one of the top 50 women lawyers, and as an IP star by Managing IP Magazine, and as South Florida Business Journal 2018 influential businesswoman. So, I'm trying to do the thing over here. Just like you. Over the past decade, I've closed thousands of transactions and have seen companies grow their licensing operations to more than $500 million. And I said billion with a B. And what I'm trying to do is bring it to our community, educate our community, educate women entrepreneurs, lawyers, whatever profession you're in, about the power of licensing. I've done deals, including with Nike Swim, PGA Tour, Callaway, a lot in the golf space. So I'm familiar with how to monetize your brand, your image, and your product. So with that, I started with the Savage Esquire, our newsletter, which is launching its inaugural issue this week, the week of Juneteenth.
Yay!
So this is the program where I talk about the launch. So I really appreciate the opportunity, Melba.
Oh, this is so amazing. And I just love the fact that we're all going to be a part of history now, right? Because we're here for the launch. We're here for, seeing this take off and become the big thing that it will be. So tell folks a little bit more about, what the Savage Esquire is about and sort of, how some of the concepts you're working on can impact their day-to-day life and how they can build their business, right? Because that's what it's all about. It's about how to build.
Yeah. So, originally, so I was an English major, right? So I'm at my core, I'm a frustrated writer. So I've been practicing, as I said, IP law for forever. And I just decided, I'm going to write about what I love, what I know. I've lived and breathed this for over 20 years, and I am just ready to write and share information. So I decided to launch my media company with the newsletter, the Savage Esquire, to satisfy that desire. And why Savage Esquire? Because, of course, there can be negative connotations with the word savage, but all I mean is I'm fierce, girl. I'm trying to be fierce. I'm fierce.
Yes.
We are empowered and an empowering voice for female entrepreneurs. From me as an IP attorney, knowing how to execute on corporate deals, I want to share that knowledge. I've worked on these deals for $1 billion companies, and I just want to amplify the voices of female entrepreneurs who frankly dare to imagine bringing their businesses to new heights, whether you are in the law or whether you are doing something else and you haven't decided what your passion is, whether you're in the law and decided that your passion is something else, how to bring your business to new heights with the power of licensing.
So can you talk a little bit to us about what licensing is, right? Because again, I know a lot of folks may have heard the term, including attorneys, because, when we had our first initial discussion, you were teaching me some things and I was like, oh, I know I went to law school and but again, if it's not your area of expertise, there's just a lot of gaps and you've just never been exposed. So if you could talk through licensing and kind of how that works and how that can work in our community.
Yeah, ultimately licensing, and of course, licensing takes many forms, but what I'm talking about is brand licensing, which typically means that I'm talking about whether it's your brand being the name, Mondays with Melba, or whether it's, your persona, your image, your voice, your likeness. So if you're an athlete or an entertainer, you're more likely to use your image and your voice and other aspects about your individual or personal characteristics as your brand. Content creators, if all the TikTokers, they are creating some kind of content. As lawyers, we have content that we produce every single day. The question is, how do you bring it to a broader audience? So if you are a business person and you have one product or one type of content, how do you expand without having to do all the work around it? Finding the team, finding a manufacturer. If you want to go into a different country, what are your resources to get into the other geographic regions? Well, the way to do that is to find strategic partners. You don't have to do it all yourself. You find those partners that align with your brand. You are responsible for controlling the quality of your brand and nurturing your brand such that it would become viable to be licensed. However, your only job is to focus on your brand, whatever it is that you decide it to be. Now, in the traditional sense, your brand will typically be a trademark or some artistic work that's copyrightable. There are patents that obviously can be licensed as well, but for an artistic or content person, it'll likely be a trademark or a copyright.
And how would that work in terms of, let's say, using my little firm for an example, right? So I have my main job, but I also have, my firm MVP Law, right? So, taking me as like a newbie firm owner, how does that impact me, and how, what steps should I be taking to make sure that I'm setting myself up for success? In this
as an example, I hope that you at least have Mondays with Melba trademarked through the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. If not, you should trademark your name as well. You definitely want to make sure that anything that you create around your brand, whether it's and I know that your brand could take many forms, but let's stick with Mondays with Melba for a minute. You can decide whether you want to create a logo or something that's either copyrightable or, of course, eligible for a trademark as well. And just make sure you protect it. Number one, protect it. Number two, nurture it. The way that you're promoting your brand today, it will hold you in good stead over the long term. You don't even have to file a trademark, and this is a little dirty secret. You don't have to file a formal trademark with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to be the owner of that trademark, as long as you are the first person to have used that trademark. So anybody that comes along and says Mondays with Melba, it's nice that your name is Melba too. However, the original Mondays with Melba is coming for you. So that's number one, is to make sure that you somehow protect your brand, and just make sure that you do. I do recommend that you file a trademark with the trademark office. It's $300 some bucks. It's worth it. And then secondly, using it consistently and making sure that you do protect it and enforce it. And then that'll set you up in good stead with all the other tools around it, whether it's marketing or other avenues to promote your brand. Making sure that you market it and nurture that brand so that it becomes desirable to a broader audience if you want to license that brand.
Awesome. I see a few steps that I'm going to need to take after this show is over.
The USPTO website is so easy. It looks daunting, but it's so easy.
Good to know. Good to know. So then what is one of the biggest mistakes you see entrepreneurs make, especially in terms of protecting their brand and protecting their creations, their work, their intellectual property? What are some like three basic mistakes that people always make? And of course, I'm going to guess one of them is not protecting your brand and not
Right.
filing trademark, but some other mistakes.
So you catch on quickly. You catch on quickly. That is number one. It's not protecting it, but it's also not enforcing. And I would say the third one is actually tied to it, not realizing that you are, even though you're a little fish, even if you're a little fish, you have rights that, even, Goliath would have to pay attention to just because of the force of the law. And so the third thing I think is really important. I'm not sure if you're aware of the decision in the Andy Warhol against v. Goldsmith case, where Goldsmith, I forget the name of the defendant, but in this case, Goldsmith was a photographer. She had taken a photograph of Prince and licensed it for one-time use to Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol, as you know, colorizes all of these photographs in different ways, and ultimately took that single use and turned it into multiple licenses with a magazine. Goldsmith originally sued the Warhol Foundation, which is the foundation that holds Andy Warhol's work, and because he had only paid her $400 for that single use, and then turned it into a multi-license deal. And with, I want to say it's Condé Nast Magazine, and she sued and lost, and then the foundation lost, and then appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled in her favor. A little David versus Goliath can win. David can win.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's definitely good to know and something to pay attention to.
Yeah. So again, that's the force. And I want to go back to an original statement that I made, that it's not necessary to file the trademark with the USPTO. However, it does give you that presumption of ownership that someone would have to overcome. And so that helps with enforcement. And likewise with the Copyright Office. I think it's like $35 now to file for a copyright. It's just not worth not filing.
And again, with your whole point of the website seems daunting, but the process isn't that bad. It's just a matter of sitting down, making a list of, okay, I've got to file for this, I've got to file for that. What are the fees? Boom, do it. Or better yet, call you and you can walk them through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Call someone like me. I have many resources that will be on our website under the Just Ask a Savage brand. We may not be able to be your lawyer, but we can provide some guidance.
Oh, that's definitely awesome. And then I want to circle back to something you had said earlier, because to me, when you said it, it was like, work smarter, not harder. When you talk about, doing these, agreements and then being able to find partners and, be able to create your legacy that way. Can you expand a little bit more on that? Kind of like what that looks like? Because again, it's sort of like, to a small business owner, I think it might sound daunting. Like, what do you mean I can have partners and overseas and I'm able to do all of this? I'm just a little 2-person firm here in Miami, or I'm just I have an Etsy store, or whatever the case may be. Maybe that's not the best example, but you're thinking I'm small. There's no way I can accomplish this.
Well, let me say this. So in the licensing world, another dirty little secret, licensing agents will market your brands for you as long as you have, in fact, nurtured that brand and it's something that they think is in their wheelhouse in order to make the deal for you. So you can find this anywhere online, but with a licensing agent, they will go out and the licensing expo was just ended in Vegas. And you as an entrepreneur can attend those expos and find an agent who will rep your brand. Guess what? You're not paying them money upfront to do that. Okay. So again, it's got to be a brand that's aligned with the work that they're capable of doing. I just interviewed a wonderful woman, April Showers with Afro Unicorn. She started out in 2019 having nothing but an idea. Someone called her a unicorn one day. The unicorn, she started to use the unicorn emoticon, and she asked herself, well, why is it that all the unicorns are white? So she developed her Afro unicorn. And 4 years ago. Now, I keep on emphasizing that because she started out with sales of $300,000 year one, I believe she said. I just interviewed her like 15 minutes ago, Melba. That woman 20x'd her revenue from licensing.
Wow.
So talk about starting from the bottom. And now she's here. She's got a deal coming off of the expo with, and because she disclosed it to me, I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to disclose it, with Build-A-Bear coming in 2024. She's in 3,800 Walmart stores. She's been shouted out by, Viola Davis and, everyone under the sun, Oprah, all the big names. I mean, she's incredible. So to go back to your question about how can you do this all by yourself, April is the example of how you can do it. You don't need to have a ton of employees. I think she's still a solopreneur. What I did was I reached out to her PR. Well, I reached out to her on LinkedIn, and she said LinkedIn is where you make your money, by the way. But I reached out to her on LinkedIn. She says that 99% of how she's made her deals is through LinkedIn. She did get one introduction from Walmart, but how did she get Walmart? She'd been building her business, her brand for 2 years. So she put in her work, and then all of a sudden there was a video that went viral with a young lady who was wearing one of her shirts. She got the call, and from there built it to over $7 million in 4 years. That's the power of licensing. And she named 4 people on her team: her PR person, her licensing person, someone who made the deal because he had some kind of connection and connected her with a lawyer. I think she has 4 or 5 people, and one of them is her son.
Wow. That's
Yes.
amazing. And that's almost like that beautiful pandemic story, right? Because,
Right.
people had an idea in 2020, we shut down for basically 2 years. So now, since you had all this time, there's so many people that built little businesses and kind of, and I don't mean little as in, this is not meant derogatory.
Insignificant. Yeah, right.
Small businesses at home, while you had free time, or out of necessity because you got laid off or you couldn't go in to work physically. But now you have this thing. How do you make it bigger? And that also comes back to something you said earlier. You keep saying nurture your brand. What does that mean? How does one nurture their brand? I mean, I'm thinking like a plant, like you water it, but like what sort of the steps do you think of that you use to nurture brand to make yourself more attractive to other folks?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are many ways in which to do it, because it's got to be right for you. But the common ways to really invest and nurture your brand is really, you've got to establish a brand identity. Establishing and developing that strong brand identity, whether it's that brand name, that logo, the tagline, you've just got to own it. Create brand guidelines, get a professional logo design, consistently use your visual assets to help establish a recognizable and cohesive brand image. That would be step one. And you've got to, don't let other people deter you. Don't let anyone tell you, like even with my brand, the Savage Esquire, there's a question about whether or not they like my logo or not. Thank you. Thank you. Be committed to your brand and who you are and your brand identity, and be consistent about it. There will be people who love it and people who don't. The people who love it, those are your people. All right. Your brand messaging, investing in your brand messaging involves crafting a compelling brand story. What is your story? My story is that I'm a frustrated writer who has tons of experience in IP. I want to marry those two. I care about women entrepreneurs. I care about the people of the global majority. I care about bringing that and amplifying voices of our community in order to show them the power of their brand and leveraging their brand. You don't have to do it all yourself. marketing and advertising. You will have to invest. And I say invest. Don't think of it as spending, it's investing in your marketing and your advertising. It is a payback. It's no different than if you're paying your mortgage. You are building equity in your brand by investing in your marketing and advertising. And then of course you have to focus on the customer experience. You want them to always feel the same thing. You want to control the quality of if it's a product, you want to make sure that the quality of the product is right. So even when you're reaching out to your strategic partners, your licensees or your potential licensees, you've got to know that they're going to take care of your brand the way that you want it to be taken care of. You want all the people who experience your brand to have the same experience, whether it's online, whether it's offline, whether it's through customer engagement online, through Instagram. Your interaction with them should always be consistent because you want to build that equity in the brand. And finally, again, don't be afraid of brand partnerships and sponsorships. You want to collaborate with other brands to the extent that you can in order to expand your reach. No one did it by themselves, no matter what they said. Strategic partnerships can help you to create unique products, unique experiences that can resonate with your target audience. And if you focus on those 5 things, I think that you will be a long way into nurturing your brand and building a brand that will set you up for long-term income through licensing.
No, these are some really awesome points, Tricia. And I think also too, what bears highlighting is that, some of these investments that you can make, like it doesn't mean when you hear invest, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I need to have $100,000 to be able to put towards a social media manager. No, like maybe you can get a dude or a person on Fiverr and they can create your logo. And then you just consistently post using your logo, according to your own schedule. Or so there's other tips and tricks to be able to do it in an economic way. You just have to figure out how best to invest so you can get all of those items that you need to be able to have that brand presence. So that all makes amazing sense. Yeah. So with the last few minutes, can you share with folks, basically how they can find you, how they can sign up for the newsletter, and if they want to arrange a consultancy interview or something like that, how they'd be able to get in touch and avail themselves of the services.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we're launching this week. So the website's already established at savageesquire.com, but it's abbreviated SVGESQ.com. And our Instagram handle is the same, SVGESQ. And the website will lead you through subscribing.
Perfect.
And I should mention, you can also click on the link for Just Ask a Savage. We encourage you to submit your questions. As I mentioned, I can't be your lawyer, but we can certainly help you get resources and answer some very basic questions, not with the intent of giving legal advice, but certainly with the intent of educating.
This is huge. And for everyone who's tuned in, just know that the link is going to be in the comments. So that way you can always refer back once you've, seen this episode, or if you're just like, wait a minute, what was that sister's name again? The information will always be there for you to be able to click. I highly recommend you follow Tricia on social so that way you can get some of that good advice. And even if you're not at the point where you have a business right now, but maybe in the back of your head, you're thinking, I may want to do something, at least follow and learn all of these lessons so that once you launch, you are set up for success rather than floundering in the dark like many have done before. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. So with that, Tricia, thank you so much for joining us on Mondays with Melba and sharing this amazing insight. I'm wishing you the best of luck. I cannot wait. I'm signed up for the newsletter, following on social so that I can keep learning and growing. And I hope everyone else takes that same opportunity to do so. Thank you again, Tricia.
Thank you, Melba. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, everyone take good care and stay tuned for another episode with Mondays with Melba next week. Bye, y'all.